Welcome back to Digital Wandering. And wanted to talk about iPod Touches a little bit more. Just did a video on the iPod Touch first generation. And there's one thing I forgot to mention in that video. Now, I did talk about this case, but this case is covering up something you can't really see. In the upper corner here, there is a crack on the screen. Case covers it perfectly so you can't see it. This is the only mobile device in which I ever cracked the screen. I dropped this. Well, actually, it fell. I didn't drop it. And it was in the case at the time, a leather case that I had, and it fell face down, boom, and it cracked the screen right here. But this case covers it perfectly. And all the smartphones, tablets, and what have you that I've used, this is the only one that has a cracked screen, and you can't even see it. So just something I wanted to mention. But I have other iPod Touches here. So you have the first generation, which we've talked about. This is the fourth generation, fifth, and sixth. Sixth generation is running an update, still supported. We'll talk about that. So this is from 2007. Fourth generation is from 2010. This is a 2012 device. The fifth generation. Got to keep my generations in order here. It's going to be hard. It's going to be easy for me to make mistakes here because I do my videos unscripted. And this is the sixth generation running an update. Sixth generation came out. If I didn't mention here, this came out in 2012. That's like a tongue twister here. This is the fifth generation. Sixth generation came out in 2015, 3 years later. This can go up to iOS 12. And I thought iOS 12. Now, iOS 12 came out in 2018. For whatever reason, Apple decided to support iOS 12 for multiple years. So the last update came in January of 2021, and I thought that would be the last one because there was no update in February. But in late March, they released a security patch update, which I'm running right now for iOS 12. So iOS 12 is being supported. This is in its third year now, and I don't know when that's going to stop. So this device came out in 2015. It's in its sixth year, and Apple is still supporting it with, at the very least, security patches. So it's an excellent thing. The support has changed over the years. This was supported for roughly 3 years. These two were supported for roughly 4 years each. And this is going on in 6 years. So support has increased over time. And now you have the seventh generation, which I do not have. So you have seven generations for the iPod Touch, and I have 4 of them. So it was a device category that I was really invested in. I really liked this category. I mean, essentially iPhone without the phone. And that maybe is the problem with this device category now. It wasn't a problem previously because one of the things I did is when I had the iPod Touch 1, I think my main phone at the time when I had this was a dumb phone or a feature phone. It wasn't a smartphone when I was using this. I had smartphone or smartphone-like devices prior to this, but then I think my phone around that time was a dumb phone, but I could use this for my mobile media. The dumb phone wasn't really mobile media capable, but this was. So I had a reason to carry this around with me. And it also had 16 gigabytes of internal storage, which the feature phone did not have at all. I'm not really sure with how much internal storage that the feature phone had, but it was way less than that. So I often use these devices as companions. These other devices here, like the iPod Touch fourth generation. Fourth generation is interesting because this is the only one here that I've never used a case for, the fourth generation. It's always been caseless. And you see the back metal panel, or I don't know what you would call this, the back case Has a lot of scratches and is very fingerprinted up, but there's no real damage to the glass at all. And I, for whatever reason, I just never bought a case for this. I'm really normally pro case when it comes to getting devices, but for this one, for whatever reason, I never had a case. This was normally within a case, but I think it's not in a case now. At some point, I took it out of the case. I believe this is the case that the iPod Touch 6th generation, the 6 is using. I think I originally first had it on this, the 5th generation. Each generation I went up in storage size. So this one's 16. This is 32. What am I opening up there? Let's close that. This is 16. This is 32. This is 64 gigabytes of internal storage. And this one is 128. I often use the iPod Touches as companions with my Android phones. I'm really invested into the Apple ecosystem, I guess, and I have a lot of apps on Apple and a lot of media that only works on my Apple device. So I often would use these in conjunction with my Android phones because, I like to use everything. Apple is my favorite company, but I find value in everything in Apple, Android, Windows Phone, Ubuntu Touch. I mean, all of this is valuable to me. So since I'm crazy like that and I like to use everything, I often find use case scenarios for devices that make that process easier. And the iPod Touch allowed me to still use iOS and in a great way if I choose at any given moment to use an Android phone as my primary device, which has been the case for several times throughout the years. One of the good things also that the iPod Touch has allowed me is I had this many years. The first generation of iPod Touch I got in 2007. I didn't get my first iPhone until 2012. So this really eased my transition into the iPhone because I was already very familiar with using iOS from iPod Touch first generation, and then the 4th generation, which came out in 2010. I also used that before I got my first iPhone. So it's a great tool to experience iOS. But why do I not have a 7th generation? And it looks like this is downloaded now. So, oops, I just turned it off. Let's get that back up here. Okay, so this is downloaded now, so we can go to install, verifying update. It's just amazing to me that this is still supported by Apple right now. And I'm very glad I did this video because I had this stashed away, and since I don't use this on a regular basis anymore, I wasn't aware that the update had just been completed or just been sent by Apple. It looks like Apple sent that update in late March, so it hasn't been sitting for that long, so that's cool. Okay, but why don't I have a 7th generation? And why, in general, do I not use my iPod Touches that much any longer? A couple things here. One thing, the iPhone itself has come down in price. So prior, you just had the iPhone, which was the flagship device. But over time, Apple has created other devices that are more price friendly. The main one, there's a couple of different ways you can look at this, but you have the iPhone SE. The iPhone SE is the main phone that I'm using right now. That's essentially my daily driver, and I'm actually using it to record this video. But that is the starting price for that is $400. So that's very affordable for an iPhone. I mean, you can pay 3 times as much as that for an iPhone Pro Max. So the price of the iPhone, and that's brand new. You can get a 64 gigabyte iPhone SE from 2019, the 2019 release, for $400, brand new from Apple. the iPod Touch, the 7th generation, the Max, and the Max, it starts off at like $200 for a 32 gigabyte model. That's not enough storage for me. So I probably would want to get the 256 gigabyte model iPod Touch, and that comes in at $400. So once you get up to that $400 range, and that's the one I would probably be interested in, 256 gigabytes of storage, you're right at iPhone SE level. You can get a 60, and it's a full phone. You can use them. These devices are obviously mobile, the iPod Touches, but they don't have any cellular connectivity. The iPhone SE will have a better camera than the iPod Touch. Also, the iPod Touch has not updated its form factor since this device, and that came out in 2012. And I think they do that so that the accessories are the same. Just like I was able to switch this case from the 5th generation to the 6th generation device, I think the 7th generation also has the same exact form factor, so all the accessories are the same. But the 4-inch screen is a little bit dated now. It's very small. And my iPhone SE has a similar screen, and it's just very tiny for me right now. And I didn't feel that way when I first got the iPhone SE. I got it refurbished from Apple in 2018, and I'm still using it as my main daily driver. So I don't have the 2019 iPhone SE. I have the 2017 or 2018 model, or 2017 model, I think is the one that I have, and I got it refurbished in 2018. So that's my main phone. But and I'm hoping that it gets the next version of iOS so I can continue to use it. I think it will, but we'll have to see when Apple releases their next keynote. I don't remember if it's the keynote, if it's a keynote or it's World Developer Conference. Wherever they release the information on the next version of iOS, they always tell you which devices it will support. And there's a strong likelihood that the iPhone SE that I have will still be supported by Apple. If it's not, there's a chance that it will still receive security patches, just like this device, which is 6 years old and still supported by Apple. So we'll see what Apple does. Apple will do what it will do. But yeah, it seems fairly dated. The screen at 4 inches, a little small, has no biometrics, which when I was looking for when I heard about a new iPod Touch potentially being released, and people have been saying for the last 6 years pretty much that the iPod Touch is dead as a device. I mean, this goes back so long. The rumors were like the Apple was going to discontinue it, but they keep it alive for some reason, which I'm still not sure about. It's just no biometrics was a big thing. I was really looking forward to a couple things: biometrics and Apple Pay support, but none of those things were there. They do have, this is the max on this. The 6th generation was 128, so they do have 256 gigabytes of storage. They did double the RAM. This one had, if you look at the RAM on these, this one, I keep launching stuff. The iPod Touch 1st generation is like 128 megabytes of RAM. The 4th generation, 256 megabytes. This is 512. This is 1 gigabyte. And now the current one is like 2 gigabytes of RAM. So you have more RAM. You do have a higher storage max. So that's good. But no biometrics. No Apple Pay support, so you can't use Apple Pay with this. And also the screen size. And there's also another issue here. These earlier ones, I had no issue with the battery life. The battery life was fabulous for me. For such a small, slender, and really small battery capacity on paper, they lasted pretty decently. Like this, the fourth generation, I use this a lot with conjunction with other phones like Android phones. And I would load this with like my music. And I would use it throughout the week. I would load this up on a Monday. And when I'm loading it up, I'm talking about powering it up. It has that 3-pin connector. I'll power it up to 100%. And then use it throughout the week for my music. And it would last the entire week. You know, for several hours a day, I would listen to my music on this thing. And it just was beautiful for music playback. Just lasted a really long time. And I did that so that I wouldn't have to use my main phone for music. You know, I could just use it for other things. And it saved that battery on my main phone. So that would last throughout the day. So I could just use the iPod Touch for that function. And it used that beautifully. And I don't remember any battery issues with the 5th generation iPod Touch from 2012. But the 6th generation from 2015, a lot of battery issues with that. It's very frustrating how the battery operated on the 6th generation iPod Touch. And I did some tests with it, with movies that I saved to the device, and it lasted for about 6 hours of video playback on locally saved devices, which was much better than I thought. But what it seems to do is when it's in standby, when you have it in sleep mode, the battery drains really fast. You'll take it off of the charger and it's at 100%, and then very soon, it doesn't show you the percentage of the battery when it's off the charger. So you just see the battery icon. But that battery icon, the green on the icon that shows the level of battery will just drop so fast. And then it will start giving you battery messages that, you have a low battery, you're at 20% or at 10%. And it hasn't been off the charger that long. So I think it's either a couple different things. It wasn't properly battery optimized, or there's some, and that could be that's across the board. Or there's just a lot of devices out there that have really poor battery performance, like it's a quality control issue. But it was very common in the forums to hear people complain about the battery for the iPod Touch 6th generation. So many generations here, I got to really think about them before I mention them. But yeah, so this is still updating though. Still supported for some reason. And this is true not just the iPod Touch, but a lot of devices where they're maxed with iOS 12. They are still supported by Apple, like the iPhone 5S is still in the same situation as well, where it's still receiving security patches that came out in 2013. So that's even older than this. Okay, so it looks like it's asking me to sign in now. So it looks like the update is complete. Yeah, so it is complete, the update. So there we go. I'm just going to turn that off right now. But yeah, this is the iPod Touch. So it's just basically that I've outgrown the iPod Touch as a useful device. If they made some changes here now, if they increased the screen size a bit, because of my experience with the 6th generation, I don't trust the battery performance of even though I had no battery issues earlier on, the battery performance I had with this device has soured me on this category of devices. It's quite possible that the 7th generation does not have that battery issue, but I would feel much more comfortable if it had a larger battery capacity. It's still working with the same form factor that it's been using since 2012. If they put a really big battery in there, maybe 3,000 milliamp or bigger, I'll feel more comfortable with the potential of the battery performance on the iPod Touch. But they want to keep it with this same slim form factor, which I understand. It's great. I love it. These devices out of the case normally, like except for the 4th generation, I normally keep these in the case. So I never really use the 5th generation I have in my hand and outside of a case. but it's just beautiful to hold outside of a case. It's so slender and feels so good in the hands. Ah, man, it's wonderful. So I understand the attachment to it, but I keep launching this by mistake. Whenever I touch it, it launches the app. So I understand the attachment to the slender form factor here, but I need a bigger battery. I need a bigger screen. I need some biometrics. It would be great if it could support Apple Pay. That gives it some usefulness. For the longest time online, there were people who wanted the iPod Touch to get some type of cellular connectivity. But if you need that, you get an iPhone. That's another issue, is that the price on the iPod Touch I'll be most interested in is getting very close to it's right there at iPhone SE pricing. So when it gets that close, you might just want to get an iPhone SE. So that's also another issue here. But it's still, there still has to be fans out there, because Apple continues to release them every few years now. I mean, the years are getting longer and longer. I mean, this one came out in 2015. The iPod, the latest iPod Touch came out in 2019. That's a 4-year gap. So that's a really long time. There was a 3-year gap between the fourth generation and the fifth generation and sixth generation is a 3-year gap. The gaps are increasing because in the early part, with the iPod first generation, the second generation came out a year later, the third generation came out a year later after that. So this one came out in 2010. This is the fourth generation. The fifth generation came out in 2012. So there's a 2-year gap between these. Then there's a 3-year gap between these. This is 2012 to 2015. And then the 2015 to the 2019 seventh generation. So that's a 4-year gap. So the gaps are increasing. So it's a possibility that sometime that Apple will stop. I mean, this is the last iPod that they still sell from my understanding. So at some point it's going to be the end of the line. I don't know if I will ever get another iPod Touch. The reason for purchasing it is kind of past for me, but still still a device that I like having in my collection. And I might do individual videos on some of these, but we'll have to see. But yeah, I just had to profile the iPod Touch in a big way because it was such an important part of my mobile computing experience. So this is Digital Wandering. Thank you for watching. Signing off.